It's 9 o'clock now. We have a nice little intimate group today, so this should be fun. So if you don't know, you are in the Entrepreneurship Panel. And we have our lovely speakers here today. On your panel, we have Mike Tanner, Jackie Beerley, Jackie, and Kristen O'Keefe at the end. So this is going to be fun. So thank you so much all to the panelists for sharing your insights and your morning with us here at Mount St. Vincent University. And I have a few housekeeping things for the students today before we start. So students, you must stay for the entirety of the panel. Please don't leave halfway through. If you are claiming this on your learning passport, you need to fill out a survey that you should have gotten as you walked in. When you fill out your survey, we will stamp your passport. You know how that works. I don't need to say this, but I'm going to anyways. Please be respectful when someone else is speaking, whether that is a panelist or another student asking a question. We ask you remain silent. And you will have opportunity to ask your own questions after we go through the 8 panel questions. So hold on to those throughout the panel. Also, another reminder that I know I don't need to remind you all of, please don't use your cell phones during the session. So without further ado, we will move on to the first question. So to all the panelists, you can start in whichever order you please. Briefly describe the organization you work for and your position.
My name is Mike Tanner, and I work with an organization called One Red Cat Media. We are a creative agency in Halifax, Nova Scotia. When I say we, it's primarily been myself and working with other freelancers and remote workers, developing websites and providing a variety of content solutions for local and abroad companies. So.
Hi, I'm Jackie, Briley Sharukh. It's a big mouthful, which is why I said just Jackie. My organisation, again, is very small like Mike's. I started it a year ago. It is business development, but with a heavy bent on e-commerce, which, having got here in Halifax about 18 months ago, realised that e-commerce isn't quite as prevalent here as it is in the UK. So I've had quite a big learning curve. So I'll pass over to...
Right, good morning. My name is Kristen O'Keefe. I used to go here 20 years ago, so it's such an honor to be back. I own a law firm, O'Keefe Law, which I started just in January of this year.
Perfect. Thank you all for your answers. So question 2, how has your career evolved, and are you doing what you planned to do?
No, I'm not doing what I plan to do. And I think that's the same with a lot of people, is you start off with this big plan as to, I'm going to be doing this at a certain point. I started off wanting to be in catering. I wanted my own restaurant business by the time I was 35. I started in catering at the age of 12, doing the washing up, and progressed from that to a point where I actually ran the restaurant that I worked for. And after 18 months of running that, realised that 80 to 90 hour weeks weren't for me. So I actually ended up falling into my position, which was marketing, direct marketing, at a time when direct marketing was really coming into its own. So it has evolved greatly. I'm grateful for it. And having decided I didn't want to do 80-hour weeks, I decided to start my own business, which put me on 120-hour weeks. So, yeah, running your own business can be quite scary.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely not doing what I guess I thought I would be doing. So originally I wanted to be a journalist. Okay, I'm on a different path. But when I started with law, I was a Crown prosecutor. So people that were charged with offenses, I'd be in court representing the Crown. Did that for about 5 years. Then an opportunity came up for me to work with a nonprofit that's dedicated to educating the public about the legal system. Did that for about 6 years, but that was my dream job. It was fantastic. Then life gets in the way, met somebody who was from here, Ended up moving up here to live with him. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be doing private practice. I was always a government lawyer. I was a nonprofit, person. To me, it wasn't in tune with who I was. But I gave it a try, and I absolutely love private practice.
In a surprising twist, I am not doing what I expected to be doing. I went to school and got a degree in English, so I can read and write, which is awesome. And I started sort of using that in various things and then realized it wasn't quite what I was doing. I became a manager and a trainer with a call center for a number of years and really liked kind of working with people and developing people that way. And then I was managing a computer store that specialized in Apple products. And then we got a shiny new Apple store, and our store decided, since we're the size of a small closet, we're probably going to shut down. And I came home actually to take care of my kids. So I just had a newborn son and had some previous clients who wondered if I would be able to do a website for them, which I had done just sort of because I enjoyed doing it on the side. And so I built my first couple of websites and then decided, I could actually do this. And then over the last 6 years now, it's been bringing on more and more various types of work that are all related to that industry. And not surprisingly, not at all what I was expecting to be doing at this point. So,
Thank you. So the third question we have here this morning is, what do you like about your work and what do you dislike about your work?
Okay. It's funny that last night I was looking at the question. So I can list a million things that I love about my work. Love being my own boss. I wasn't one of these people that when I had a boss, I didn't like them, or I didn't want to do the work, don't tell me what to do. It wasn't like that. But I love having the freedom where you wake up in the morning, if you have a creative idea and you think, maybe I'll just do this, you can do it. It's so cool, and I didn't have that freedom before, so I love that. I love the fact that it's my vision. With my particular firm, because my background comes from nonprofit, I saw a lot of people that couldn't access the justice system because they couldn't afford it. So with my firm, what I'm trying to do is be affordable, accessible, make people feel comfortable the minute they come in. So I'm trying to create something different. Again, it's my business. I can do that. In terms of what I don't like about it, I guess the uncertainty in terms of when you're working for government or you're working for an organization, every 2 weeks you have this amount of money coming in, I guess there's security in that. At this stage, you never know from month to month in terms of my income. So with that, there can be a little bit of, I don't particularly like that aspect, but also when you have a really good month, it's like, yes. So there's the excitement of that as well. So I guess those would be my comments, if you want to.
What do I dislike? I'll start with I dislike. Bit like Kristen, is knowing where the next project is coming from. Because when you work for yourself, when you're an entrepreneur, especially at the start out, you are the business, and therefore you're busy making the widgets at the same time as marketing the widgets, at the same time as doing the finance, at the same time as, oh God, I've just finished that job, where's the next one coming from? I also think a little bit of loneliness at times, especially if you work from home, like I do. I can be out and about into clients' premises, but when you're on your own and you're working from home, that can get quite lonely. So it's making sure that, like me, I'm a serial networker, so I get out and I meet people that way. But that's the one thing that can get you as an entrepreneur.
It's a common theme is the uncertainty of where the next sort of paycheck is going to come from. Not the paycheck per se, but the idea that I don't have a set amount. So budgeting specifically becomes a lot more difficult. So not so much the idea of am I going to get another project? I know I'm going to get another project, but the idea of where exactly am I going to be at can be a little bit difficult and can be a little bit scary if you're someone who really needs that, that can be a little bit difficult for you to handle. The the loneliness factor, my wife works full time, and when she comes home, I basically just explode with everything I would like to say to anyone who is anywhere. So the idea of like getting to talk to other people. In the beginning, I was working very much on my own. And so that was an issue at that point. Now that I've brought on some even just remote workers and some people that I collaborate with locally, there's a lot sort of better sense of community that way. My biggest thing is the biggest thing that I love about what I do is the idea that I get to directly impact what's happening. You know, I worked as a manager at a call center that had 2,000 employees. And honestly, it was kind of that thing, if you've ever seen Office Space, of like I could have been in a room in the basement and probably no one would have noticed for a little while. And you sort of get that feeling sometimes when you're working in large corporations. And so the idea that if I'm alone in the basement for a week, things are going to go very poorly is actually something that I really enjoy, because I know that what I'm doing has a direct impact on my bottom line, on my growth, on my reputation within the community especially. And so those are the things that I really, really enjoy. Having that that sort of pressure to a certain extent is actually quite fun.
Thank you. The fourth question for this morning, can you tell us about the types of jobs that might be available for students considering a career within your organization? This can include a new grad, a summer part-time job, or a co-op opportunity.
There's, within my organization, there's different possible opportunities. I just started, but I had a student who was working just part-time, just doing some scanning for me, doing administrative stuff. The other thing is, with my firm, I try and be active on social media. You know, and I have a certain mindset. I like to have new people in that have different ideas and are creative, and I want to kind of not shock, but the legal system tends to be fairly traditional. And so, you know, I want to do something different, maybe make people kind of think like, oh, that's weird that a lawyer would say that. So stuff like that. Social media is definitely something that I would need help with.
Oh, innovation. I don't need a mic. Innovation, business development, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's online, offline, business development, whether it's entrepreneurial or otherwise, is all about innovation. It's looking about the next opportunity and how you're going to take that opportunity and make that opportunity work for you. So it's the diversity. You might start as one thing, and that's where my previous business was. It started as one thing and it ended up a huge thing of all sorts of different things. So it's looking for people that have got an innovative mind, innovative thought process, push the boundaries, push the envelope, no such word as can't, knock the T off the end, as my grandmother used to say. So it's anything to do with how can we make this business better. So that's the first one. That's the most important one. I want entrepreneurs within my business to be entrepreneurial as well. Entrepreneurial doesn't just mean that you have to run your own business. You have to be that sort of person within other businesses as well. So that's the main one. And then alongside that, anybody that wants to get involved in e-commerce, and that's end to end. So that's the front end pretty bit, right the way through to the back end, pick, pack, dispatch, returns, customer service, freight, and everything to do with that.
So with my organization, everyone that's part of our team is all based on a commission basis, essentially. So on a commission or a by project. So for example, I've got graphic designers. When we have a new project, they're basically freelancers as well that work for me. So they basically invoice me for a logo or for a mock-up or for brochures or whatever it is, and then I end up basically providing that to the client. The development is mostly done by myself and my partner, Mike, which is confusing to have two mics, I know. And so for us, the biggest thing is just finding clients. So we've had people do leads on a commission basis again. Because we're very small, it is a very we're not a team that's basically like hiring. And this is actually one of the things that we sort of focused on. We've talked over and over again about like, maybe we get an office space and maybe we move in. And I've worked for companies that have like really cool office spaces with beer and coffee and records, and they just fired 3 people. And so I try to be very sparse with what we have from that perspective. So when we're bringing people on, it's really a matter of people who are able to quickly develop and maintain business relationships with new clients and new customers in a way that, as Jackie kind of said, the problem is that you're always doing. So like I'm building a website and I'm writing content and I'm managing different people's social media, and then I have to go find clients, and that part can be the biggest struggle. So sales and marketing for us is always sort of the biggest focus of what we're looking for people to be able to do. So.
Thank you. So question 5, what was your motivation for starting your own business, and why did you choose to start the business you did?
I'm, as you might have recognised from my accent, I come from away. So when I arrived here in April last year, not last year, the year before, 18 months ago, I did spend the first 3, 4, 5 months looking for a job, thinking that I would be able to come here with the knowledge and experience and expertise that I had and just jump into an e-commerce job. Wasn't to be. There is no e-commerce, or not a lot. So I was in a position where, because I was from away, I was a little bit further down the list when it came to interviews, etc. So it was a case of, well, if I can't go that route, sod it, I'll make my own business. So I have spent the last 30 years running businesses, building businesses. So I thought, right, I'm going to do it again here. So that was the reason I started the business, and I've basically continued doing the business I was doing in the UK, but the one thing I vowed, and I did actually promise my other half, I wouldn't actually employ people again. That's not quite going to happen, because once you start a business, you're on that roller coaster, and that's it. You do what the business needs you to do. So I've broken my promise already.
My motivation in terms of starting this, I'm from away too. I'm originally from Newfoundland and Labrador, so I moved here about 7 years ago. But for me, I wanted to do something different, and I've never been risk adverse, so I'm not afraid to take chances. Like, I've left jobs where people are saying, like, you left a full-time permanent job with a pension, are you crazy? I'm not afraid to take those chances and follow my dreams. So for me, I knew that there needed to be something different in terms of legal services. I knew there needed to be, something, a different model. So with my particular firm, I've actually linked up with the business center, Many Hats, which you rent an office space. They have different entrepreneurs that can go in, and they have hot seating. So if you want to just be a member and go in and kind of circulate and have somewhere to sit. Anyways, I keep my fees low so that my operating expenses are low, so that when I charge the client, I can charge a lower fee. So it's not me selling the business. It's important to me personally, and I think that's what's important. You need to believe in what you're doing. People can see through when you're not genuine. And before I came here, I have a nephew who's in second year university, and I've been out of the loop for a while. So I just said, do you have any advice in terms of me speaking? And he said, Kristen, just be real, and that's, you need to be real in all that you do, and especially when it comes to your career.
When I was in grade 4, I would trace hockey cards and sell them to people in my class. When I was in grade 7, my friend and I built a board game and then sold it to our friends. I briefly had a small, in my garage, recording studio where I would record people's music, and then I would talk about how I was going to market it. So I always kind of thought, well, I want to run my own business, and I didn't really know what that would look like. And then I worked for a very, very large company. And during that time, I started doing a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of watching, a lot of listening about how businesses run. And I just got very disinterested in sitting in a meeting every Monday morning so we could sit for an hour and talk about the same thing we talked about last week and read those reports that we did. And so I've actually spent the last several years talking about at various conferences, entrepreneurship conferences, etc., the idea that like we need to change the way we do business. And I came to a point where I did not believe I could do that in the ways that I was currently doing it. I didn't believe that as a manager or as a trainer, I was provided the opportunity to actually make real change about an organization, which for me was sort of what I always wanted to do. I wanted to be able to say, this is how I do business and this is how business should be done. And so it came to a point when the store I was working at closed. I was off for a year. During that period when I started to have the opportunity to actually do some things on my own, I sort of realized like, oh, I could do all the things that I thought weren't right about the companies I had worked with. And again, I wasn't someone who was, if my manager asked me to do something, I didn't say, no, that's stupid, I don't want to do it. I basically was just like, yeah, I'll absolutely do it to the best of my ability, but also it's really dumb. But I'm still going to do it, that's fine. And I think over the time of running my own business, that's been the biggest thing, is the idea that I get to ensure that the way things are happening is the way that I think they should be happening. And that's sort of where my motivation came from.
Thank you. Question 6. What are the advantages and or disadvantages to being an entrepreneur?
Advantages, you get to shape your life, but you also get to shape other people's lives, both clients, your staff, and everybody around you. And a bit like you were saying just then, it's when you're in a bigger corporation, that can be a little bit more difficult, unless you are the type of person that I said earlier that is an entrepreneur within a business. So if you are that type of person that is prepared to stick your head above the parapet, which it'll get shot off a few times, but if you're prepared to do that, whether or not you're in a business of somebody else's or whether you're in your own, being entrepreneurial does make give you a huge advantage. You get to make most decisions, and I won't say that you get to make all your own decisions, because actually if you're running a business, you're not running it for you, you're running it for your clients. And therefore it's your clients that will dictate to you. So that's a bit of a double-edged sword. It's great when you've got great clients that work with you, but at the end of the day, if a client says jump, you say how high and how long do you want me to stay up there? And that probably is an advantage, because it's great for the reputation, but it's also a disadvantage because it can be quite hard work.
So one of the things that I did when I first started running my business was I sort of sold myself on two things in the very beginning. One was that I was probably going to do things for a lot less than some of the larger companies that they were going to get to do it. And two was that I was going to be available at a moment's notice for anyone who needed anything. And over the last 6 years, I have gone back on both of those things in sort of the way that I've presented myself, because I realized that I do a really good job. And so price doesn't have to be something that I necessarily compete on. A lot of people starting out with entrepreneurship start out with the idea of like, well, I'll just charge them a small amount because I'm just starting out. And you have what's called Impostor Syndrome, where you're not really sure that you should be there and you should be the person doing this. And so it takes a little while to realize that you're worth probably a lot more than you think you are. And so when I started out, that was one of the big things. And one of the other things in terms of availability was me saying like, well, I'm this, I'm available. Like if you need a new piece of content to come up, you call me, like I'll get it up immediately. And then I realized that I was doing something that no other company in that field was doing and that no one really expected me to do. So I've now set very clear ideas with my clients in terms of what is expected from me and what's expected from them. And I think that one of the big advantages is being able to set the terms on which you want to operate. There have been clients where I've said, I don't think we're a good fit. I don't think this is going to work, despite the fact that it would be a reasonably, a good payday. But it's just not something that's going to work out for either of us. The disadvantage, if any of you follow Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, at one point he talks about the idea of like the market is never wrong. And so based on what you've kind of said is that it does not matter what you're interested in doing when it comes down to the very end. If there is no market for that, or the market has decided this is what the price is for that, or this is what this, it can take a lot of work to change that. It is possible to change, but it takes an awful lot of work to go against the market itself. So one of the disadvantages is when the advantage of working in a regular company is you just have your job and you have your paycheck, and those two things sort of typically just sort of go. The disadvantage with this can be that you are being pulled in some of those directions by things that you don't necessarily control. You get to make the decisions. Making the decisions doesn't necessarily mean you have all the control in the world. So.
All right. In terms of advantages, and I mean, my colleagues here have touched on a number, but what I love is when you work, like I always worked hard even when I worked for an organization, but it's different. It's a different feeling when you're working for yourself and you have success. It's much more satisfying. So I love that part of it. I love the fact I don't have to deal with red tape. I do have some projects on the go with different organizations and government organizations, and they have all these approval levels that they have to go through. And it's frustrating for them, and it's so nice just to be able to say, yeah, I can do it. So I love that freedom. In terms of the disadvantages, the loneliness is an issue, definitely. But there's options, like Jackie mentioned, getting out and networking. The Center for Women in Business, they have a morning breakfast once a month where all these entrepreneurs come together. You can network, you can chat about issues. So it's lovely to get involved in stuff like that. The other challenge is that I could be working literally 24 hours a day. And when I started, I was like, oh, you need a will on a Friday night at 7 o'clock? No problem. Thursday at 2, whatever, not 2 in the morning, but, Sunday I'll go in. Sundays I'd go in. It was taking over my life. I have a family, I have a kid, and I really needed to step back and say, okay, I'm not going to be doing the evenings. So you need to make sure that you have that balance because it can take over your life. Yeah, I guess those would be my comments.
Thank you. Question 7. What personal and professional qualities or attributes do you think are necessary to be successful in starting your own business?
Passion. Tenacity. Passion. Utter belief in yourself and what it is that you're trying to start. Passion. Did I say that? I think so. And a constant learning. And that's been sort of a theme running through what we've set up here. It sounds almost as if we're doing entrepreneurialism down on the fact that we're sort of saying it's hard work, it's you don't know where your next paycheck's coming, we're doing loads of hours, we are beholden to clients and staff and everybody else. It's a fantastic opportunity if you get the chance, take the chance and want to make it happen. To run your own business, to be entrepreneurial is fantastic. But it will only work if you've got passion, don't know if I said that, belief, utter belief in what it is you're doing, and don't let anybody deter you. Dragon's Den or otherwise, if you believe in it and you think it's going to happen, if you put the amount of effort and passion into it, it will work.
Remember this, you're not for everybody. And that was mentioned to me. You may have a business, but not everybody will like you. Not everybody will think it's a great idea. That's fine. Just be aware of that and still push forward. If you believe in it is what you sell. For me, some people like to go to the big law firms downtown. They like that. They like the certain feel of a law firm. They're not going to get that at my firm. I strive to be down to earth, approachable, all those things that maybe for some people no, that's not me. That's fine. I don't have to be for everyone. Same with entrepreneurs. Keep that in mind. The other thing that it's one of these things that somebody mentioned to me, and it may be a cliche, but it's so true. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. I live by that. I don't like networking. I'm relatively shy. So when I'm forced to go out and do these things, it really is me forcing myself. And, Jackie's heard this story, but I went to a networking event met somebody, from that, I now have a radio show, and it's sort of like one of those things that if I hadn't have gone and I didn't want to go, then I never would have went down that path. So be open to going down those weird paths that you may not want to travel.
So for me, I think the biggest thing is, they've touched on a lot of things, the willingness to learn, not just the ability to accept change, but the excitement about change. It's one thing to say like, oh, if something comes up, I'll go ahead and take that. It's another thing to say like, that there's something new, all right, let's go do that. When I first started building websites, I was building them using a drag and drop builder similar to Squarespace, and then writing little bits of code that I needed in between to connect everything and make it work. So I had a client from the States who wanted me to build a site, and we'd gone through, it was when I was beginning, I didn't really understand how to set up an initial client sort of meeting. We'd gone through all these things, I knew what she wanted, I was so excited, and at the end she was like, oh, and obviously it has to be in WordPress, which is a platform for building websites. And I was just like, I've never built a WordPress site in my life. And it would have been very easy to walk away from that client and say, I'm just not the person for you. But instead what I said was, look, you've seen the sites I've built, you know what I can do. If you give me a little bit of time to wrap my head around WordPress, then I think I can do this. You just need to give me the time to sort of research it and take a look. So instead of being sort of dissuaded by it, last year I spoke at WordCamp, which is the WordPress conference that was held for the first time in Halifax last year, with people who wrote the actual code, wrote the documentation, make the largest plugins in the world, were all at this conference, and I got to hang out with them and talk and sit on a panel similar to this and talk about my experiences with it. So the willingness to just say, whatever it is that is coming at me, I'm going to approach it with a level of excitement is very, very important. The other thing, in the words of my grandfather, gumption. The thing is that no one's going to come along to you when you're an entrepreneur and say, you should try and learn these other skills, or they might, but you should do this or you should do that. You need to just say, what's the next level things that I need to get better at? Do I need to learn marketing better? Do I need to learn analytics better? Do I need to learn to code? Do I need to learn, better management skills? Whatever it is, the resources for you to get that, both in university and outside university on learning platforms, is all there. It just depends on whether or not you actually want to go do it. So those are my biggest things. If you don't have a skill, go get it. Find someone who has that skill. Ask them how they got that skill. Ask them if they'll help you get that skill. Entrepreneurs in general actually really, really want other entrepreneurs to succeed. It's one of the passions of entrepreneurs is to work with other entrepreneurs and get them going. I listen to a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk, so there's another quote where he says, winners give winners at bats. What it basically means is that if you've succeeded and you're in this field, one of the things you love to do is help someone else get better. And so you need to take advantage of and seek out those opportunities whenever it's possible.
Thank you. So the 8th question that we have is, what advice would you give to university students who might be thinking about opening their own business?
Following on from what Mike's just said, that's probably a very good place to start, is if you're teaching somebody else, you learn so much more. So that's one thing. The other areas, there's 3 areas I'd like to cover. Finance, that is the be-all and end-all of your business. You can have all the widgets in the world, you can have clients, all the clients in the world, but you have got to know your finances inside out, upside down, back to front, eat them, sleep them, dream them, because that is the success or failure of your business. Get to know them, get to understand them, get the gut feel as to that doesn't quite look right, why. So finance is absolutely top. Staff, always buy the best people you can afford, and preferably better than you can afford and more expensive than you can afford because they're better. And the reason being is if they're that good, if they are good, they will cover their cost 10 times over and they will take you forward far, far faster. And that leads me to my last one, which again, alongside both those two are really important. It's learning the difference between cost and cost effectiveness. Two very, very different things. For example, you may be fantastic at making widgets, but you haven't got the first clue about marketing. If you try and struggle through and do that marketing on your own, you might get there eventually, but it'll take you a long time. And all the while you're doing that, you're not making your widgets. And if you're not making your widgets, even your marketing isn't going to get you anywhere because you haven't got anything to sell, because you've been too busy trying to do too much on the marketing that you don't really know anything about. So if you find the right person that is good, that you can pay to do the marketing while you're building the widgets, that person will pay for themselves again 10 times over while you're building the widgets. So look at cost effectiveness rather than cost. Bloody difficult, sorry, am I allowed to say that? Very difficult when you first start out because you haven't got any money, 9 times out of 10. But it is an incredibly rewarding thing to do, because you actually get to take your business forward far, far faster. So cost effectiveness, go for cost effectiveness every time.
For me, one of the biggest things that I found when I was starting, and that my biggest sort of encouragement to people, is to put yourself out there and connect with people that are doing the things you want to do. So whether that's going to networking events, whether that's going to conferences, whether that's calling people up out of the blue, not out of the blue, but and asking to meet and chat with them about things. The biggest thing is you need to have a really solid grasp of what it is you're doing before you jump into it. I know people who've decided, at the conference I was just at, 2 people that I had known for years told me that they were going to start building websites for clients, and literally had no idea how to do it, what to do. They had just decided they were launching these businesses. And it's very easy to look at existing models of business and say, oh, I'll do that. That sounds good. It's easy to say, like, oh, subscription boxes. Like, everyone needs a subscription box for razors and toys and books and all these different things. But if you don't have the idea, if you don't have the passion and the wherewithal to know what solution you're providing, that's not going to work out very well. So my biggest thing would be to ask more questions than you think you have answers. Don't just jump into something and decide that you know all there is to know about that thing and decide that you're going to go ahead and build that. Start by asking a lot of questions. Ask people how they're currently dealing with a problem. And that's the other thing, is if you're building a business, find a problem, find an actual problem. Don't just look at, this might work or this might work. Find something that people are literally struggling with. I use a piece of proposal software in my work that came from, it's a local startup that's doing very, very well. And they were an agency, and they hated writing proposals. And they knew that every agency hated writing proposals, and that every agency wrote terrible proposals. So they made a piece of really, really fantastic proposal software. And that's what they do now as a business. And they basically decided there's a problem, we're going to solve that problem. So as much as possible in entrepreneurship, try to solve a problem. Don't just think, well, I want to figure out a way to make some money and not have to work for someone else and work in jogging pants. Those are all actually really awesome parts of my job. I get to wear this. Like, this is like a dressy outfit for me for work. But at the same time, find a problem and actually go fix that and do something that people go, wow, that's really awesome that you're actually doing that. So,
my advice would be, if you put a lot of pressure on yourself, so you've been here and you're like, okay, I have to start a business and I'm in university, I need to, just remember that, along your path, you may work for government. You learn from that. There's so much that I picked up from the time that I worked in government. So now even with my job as an entrepreneur, it assists me in the processes that I need to do. You may travel. You may take a year and go to Europe. That's going to add to your experiences and assist you in being a better entrepreneur. I've been making business plans since I was about 7 years old. So when you're an entrepreneur, it's in your blood. So it may kind of sit there for a little bit, but it will eventually come out. And for me, it definitely did. I reached out, it seems counterintuitive, but I reached out to lawyers that were sole practitioners. And I said, can you tell me about your experience? The amount of people, like Mike said, people are really, they want to help you. They want to tell you their experiences and they want to see you succeed. Seek professional advice. There's so many different resources out there for entrepreneurs, tons. And so really kind of look at that and explore what you might be eligible for. Be open to feedback. When I started, I was open to all sorts of feedback. Jackie and I, she didn't know that I was going to be here today. I knew she was going to be here. We have a networking group. And she said to me, Kristen, when you started, why don't you go to the local firms and just introduce yourself? And I was thinking, I'm their competition. That doesn't sound right. Anyways, from doing that, the amount of business that I've gotten from doing that, it's incredible. So be open to people like Jackie that offer that feedback that might seem like it's not in line, but be open to it. Did me a lot of good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all so much for your wonderful insights and great answers to all the questions. Round of applause. So now we have lots of time for questions. So every one of you should answer a question. No, I'm just kidding. So does anyone have a question for anyone up here? Yes. Fine. I'm just going to repeat that question for the folks online. The question was if it was hard to find financing when starting your own business. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm happy to answer that one because being in business development, that's something that I do with quite a lot of my clients. Whether or not you're an entrepreneur, whether or not you're a startup, whatever, there's always opportunities for finance. I think Halifax and Nova Scotia itself is a fantastic place to start a business. There is a lot of funding out there, both, I'm not allowed to say grant, but it's non-repayable loans, apparently. So there are non-repayable loans out there. There is a lot of 0% finance loans out there. There are banks that are susceptible to working with you, some more so than others. Credit union is a fantastic one that are always looking at the types of businesses that mainstream banks won't look at. So if you're doing something that is somewhat different, then CUA is a really good place to start. They are linked with BDC, who are financiers, though BDC can be very expensive. So when you're looking for financing, look at the best options for you. If you want something really quick, then go somewhere that, yes, it might cost you a bit more, but you will get it, and you will get it quickly. The other thing is that bear in mind that, especially when you start a business, 99 times out of 100, you will have to put up personal guarantees. If you believe in your business enough, and you believe in the capabilities and that it's going to change the world, or at least your world, then you shouldn't be scared of those personal guarantees. And I've had personal guarantees on business loans for the last 30 years. I'm still here. Haven't gone bankrupt yet, touch wood. So there's a lot of financing out there. You just have to either go online and look for it, work with the likes of CWB, and I will thank them for today because they were the first member group that I joined when I arrived here, and they've done a fantastic job for and with me and with all the people that I know through it. Anybody entrepreneurial out there want to start a centre for men's in business, then there you go, there's an opportunity. But yeah, there's a lot of finance out there. It's just a case of finding it, sniffing it out.
Depending on what kind of business you're starting as well, we'll change that. I recorded a podcast yesterday with Volta, which is a startup incubator in Halifax. And they offer some really good supports and a nice network of people, but they also can help connect people with VC financing if you're looking at a startup type business. I've also had several friends go through the CEED, Center for Entrepreneurship and Economic Development, I think is the exact name, so CEED. And what CEED basically does is you can come to them with a business idea and they'll sort of help guide that process. And part of that, depending on your exact situation, can involve some funding as well. So they're two really good resources to start with. The thing I love about Volta is that they, first off, what I was recording with them yesterday was a new program they're launching where basically people pitch an idea, and it doesn't have to be very far along. It can be in the very, very early stages. And they offer basically to bring you in-house to help build that idea and $25,000 to start with to get you on that path. So if it's a startup that you're looking for, and startup really does mean like you're going to try and build this very, very quickly and get growth in a very quick manner, Volta would be a great resource to do, and a great resource to use. So
Volta is also free to join, so get in there, join. Even if you're not an IT-based business, go and join them anyway. It's a great place to meet people. It's a great place to go and sit with your laptop and work when you're feeling a bit lonely because you're an entrepreneur working from home. So yeah, Volta is a great place to start.
There's one more thing I wanted to add to that about Volta. It was not an ad for Volta or anything like that, but in the talk that I had yesterday with the CEO, one of the things I was saying is a lot of people have the idea of like, well, you go to Volta because you're this techno coder and you've got a startup and blah, blah, blah. But all of those companies need people to write. They need administrators, they need analysts, they need sales, they need marketing. So just because you don't necessarily think that you're going to write a new piece of software that's going to change the world doesn't mean that Volta isn't a good match for you in that regard. And they've got a lot of free events, lunch and learns and stuff where you can sort of get up to speed on things.
Good. Anyone else have a question out there? Yeah. So for the folks online, that was a question about how the economy has affected the panelists' business.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in business since January, so I don't know specifically if it's affected it so far. I do know that the climate is changing in terms of people wanting legal services, and they're not prepared to spend tons and tons of money. So it's definitely a different mindset. There's also a lot of people there's some awesome services out there, like the Legal Information Society of Nova Scotia. They have a free wills app. So people don't have to pay hundreds of dollars to get a will. They can get it done, for free through this app. So, yeah, I'm not really answering your question, but it's definitely a different mindset in terms of I'm trying to create a business that is going to cater to those people that aren't prepared to pay that extra.
I think from my perspective, what I've noticed in the last 18 months, when I first came over here, it's quite scary because I've come from a country, certainly on the e-commerce side, where, for example, I've been buying my groceries online for the past 15 years. Suddenly I arrive in Halifax and I've got to go to the grocery store, which is a little bit off-putting. So for me, Halifax, Nova Scotia as a whole is a little bit behind the rest of the world. Canada is a little bit behind the rest of the world, certainly in that arena. But what I have noticed in the last 18 months since I've been here is I believe the economy is starting to change. I think it is starting to move forward. I think where Nova Scotia has been seen to be more of a lifestyle place to run a business, I think that's starting to change now, and people have got slightly different attitudes, and in just that short space of time I've noticed that difference is already starting to come through. So I think for me, I'm seeing more people want to push their businesses forward. So yes, I think the economy is starting to affect.
One of the things for me that's really nice, and it depends on what the target market for your business is that none of my clients technically have to be here. So my market here is a lot of my business. Most of the companies I work with are Halifax, Maritimes, those kind of things. But I've got clients in Ontario, I've had clients in the States. And so because of my ability to sort of reach out to a larger audience via online marketing, social media, those sorts of things, it hasn't had a huge impact. I do know that local businesses, it's harder to convince a local business you need a $10,000 website when they're like, well, I could build one. You're like, yeah, you could. And many do. our big thing has been trying to explain what the return on investment is for those people. So if you can show, like, this is where you're at right now for your business, this is what we want to do for your business, that's the part. So explaining to the client why your service is of value to them is more important than just saying how much are people willing to pay at this point. So I think it really does depend on where the market that you're going after is. If you're going to have a local shop that people are physically coming to, then that might impact it more. But if you have the ability to reach out beyond an exact area, then that's great. The other thing is there are always people with money. There are lots who don't have money at certain times or have less money, but there are people who live in Halifax that you would just be like, wait, how much money do you, like, how you just bought that because you felt like it? So there are people, it just depends on how well you're able to connect with those markets.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question? Come on. Yeah, you can ask a question.
Can I just ask, of all of you in here, how many of you are seriously thinking about starting your own business at some point? Fantastic. Go for it. You've got an awful lot to gain and very, very little to lose. Just wanted to find out.
All of you want to start a business and you don't have any questions. Yes? So, yeah, I'll return. So that question was if you guys had to jump over any, was it mental hurdles, anything you had to kind of get past through in your psyche when starting your own business?
Okay, I think that's an awesome question. With me, so I'd never been an entrepreneur, but I remember one person in particular. She sat me down and was like, "This is not going to succeed. This is going to fail. I'm just, giving you a heads up." Anyways, I actually, after the conversation, like, it kind of did a bit of a head game with me, wrote down what she said, and now I look at it and it inspires me. It makes me fight that much harder and want to succeed that much better. So definitely there are people, those naysayers, and you just have to deal with it the way you want to deal with it. But for me, I took it and actually turned it into something that motivated me.
Very similar, but slightly different insofar as it wasn't somebody else saying to me that it's not going to work, don't bother, you're a failure, you're going to fail. It was me saying to me, you're a failure, you're not capable of doing this. And that's probably more scary, because if you're having to fight yourself, that's a big fight to have, because you've always got an answer for yourself. So that for me, and that was here, that was coming here, and that was I am from away. I'd spent the last 20 years running a business in the UK with my husband. It was a huge business. We worked with some of the best known companies in the world, so it was extremely successful. And then suddenly coming here, and I'm no one. I'm not known in the industry. There isn't an industry to be known in, but I'm not known in the industry. Nobody knows my capabilities. Nobody believes that I'm capable, because here you have to do stuff for people before they believe that you're capable of doing it. Well, you can't, because they won't work with you until you've proven yourself, and you can't. So you're in that cycle. So I would say for the first few months, especially trying to find a job in the first instance, I became very, very low. And for probably the first time in my life, I actually became quite depressed. And that's a big hurdle to get over. So yes, you can get, and when I say it can be lonely, 100% it can be lonely. And if you're fighting yourself, I can stand in a room full of people networking, stand there and I'm talking to people and I've got this huge smile on my face, and inside I'm screaming and I'm crying because I'm thinking, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. So that was a big hurdle for me to get over, and it was basically a slap round the face and say, for God's sake, woman, grow up, get a grip and make this work. And it got back to that passion and belief that I know what I'm doing, I can prove myself. And yes, it's flipped completely. But that was a very, very, very scary time. So yeah, you're going to come across that.
My big moment of hurdle came actually before I'd started my own business, when I was working for this call center. So I was a trainer, and so my job was to bring in new hire classes of 30 people and try and make sure that like 15 of them would stay for at least 6 months, so that we wouldn't lose like $4,000 on our investment. And at one point, I was brought into the center director's office, and I was told that they were dramatically cutting the healthcare plan, like dramatically cutting the healthcare plan, and that they would no longer be matching pensions. And I was like, that's terrible, but it was really nice of him to bring me into this room to tell me. And then he informed me that my job for the next 2 days was going to be to stand in a room of 15 reps and tell them that over and over and over again. So my job for 2 days was for 15 people to come into a room for a meeting and me to say, I have awesome news. If your teeth fall out, too bad. And also, we don't pay for your pension anymore. And so first off, it was an awful 2 days. But the second part was coming to terms with uncertainty that I didn't really realize existed. I always had this concept of like, if you get a job at a business, you have that job forever. That's how my family, had always kind of grown up. And the understanding that businesses can shut down, businesses can downsize, all these things. Having to deal with that uncertainty actually helped me say, okay, well, uncertainty is fine because it's not just in this entrepreneurial realm, it's across the board. And so that was sort of the big thing for me that made a big difference. The second thing has actually been being really honest, both with myself and with others, about the experience. I write a lot. I blog for a blog called Yummy Mummy Club, which is a parenting blog run by a former Much Music VJ. So I write about being a parent, and most of those posts, a lot of the posts on that site are like, I did this amazing do-it-yourself Halloween costume for my kids. And I would post things like, yesterday I super glued my daughter's eye shut, and here's how the day went. And I once wrote a post for my business blog about the idea of, here's why the last project that I worked on, the last business I was looking to launch, crashed and burned. It went horrifically wrong, and here's all the reasons why, and here's what I learned from that experience. And I got a lot of really positive feedback, and I had more people that were willing to work with me and to do things with me because I'd been very willing to say, this didn't work, and I at least had the ability to analyze why it didn't work and could explain those things. So it's, try not to lie to others about how you're doing, but be very honest with yourself about how you're doing. And when you do need that support, that pick me up, I've gone to my wife and been like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if this is working. And sometimes she's been like, no, you're fine. And sometimes she's been like, no, you're right. That sucked. So I think that being very honest is one of the real important things and can be a huge struggle. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Yes? Okay, so that was a question regarding how do you think your business is going to go in the next 5 years? What is the future of it?
I feel a little bit like Doctor Who. Do you know Doctor Who? Yeah? I feel as if I have been privileged enough to be transported 20 years into the future to learn all about e-commerce and how that can help and positively affect people's businesses, to then be transported back 15 years to recreate it here. When I started in the e-commerce business in the UK, it was 1996, so it was a couple of years after Amazon first started selling their first books. And we were the first, if not one of the first, fulfillment companies, e-commerce fulfillment companies in the UK. And it was, yeah, this is never going to take off. Nobody really wants it. We always go to the grocery. Why do I need to go online to buy my grocery? Why do I want to buy a pair of shoes? I like to go and try them on. Well, now 95% of businesses in the UK trade online. 95% of businesses trade online. Canada? Anyone hazard a guess? Yeah? 17%. 17%. That for me is a huge opportunity. So there am I looking at it thinking, oh God, here we go again. But for me, I'm now at the forefront of where I was in the UK 20 years ago is exactly where I am here now. And that goes for Canada. That's whole of Canada, not just Nova Scotia, that's the whole of Canada. So for me, I look at e-commerce here, I look at my opportunities here and think, wow, it's a problem because nobody understands it, but if you can actually look at problems as opportunities, grasp them for what they are and make them happen, oh my God, my business in 5 years' time, you come work for me. Amazon, eat your heart out.
Would anyone else like to comment?
Yeah, if you had asked me 5 years ago if I was going to be doing content or whether or not I'd be doing branding, like doing logo development for companies and things like that, I probably would have said, no, probably not. I'll just be building websites. But the biggest thing has been saying yes to opportunities. The most recent project that we've worked on was a financial investment company coming to us and saying, look, we operate under 3 really terrible business names that were just like the name of a person plus a random word plus the word investment as 3 different companies, and we really need to stop that. And we actually had the opportunity to rename their company, help them develop sort of a mission statement of what they wanted to do, come up with their logo, build a brand new website, and now we're helping them build their social media presence. And so if you had to ask me 5 years ago, would I be doing that? I actually would have said maybe if I have the opportunity. And that's the biggest thing is saying yes to more things. There's been a lot of things that I've just said, someone has said, do you do this? And I've said, no, but let's check it out. Let's give it a try. And that willingness to experiment and that willingness to do things differently. I don't have any idea what's going to be going on web-wise in 5 years. I don't have any idea what's going to be going on web-wise in a year. Like things could remarkably change and regularly do. But I do know that there will be opportunities and that I'll find them and say yes to them. So.
Thank you. Another question? No one? Well, I have a question. So each and every one of you has spoken about networking and its importance and how it's helped you greatly. So students, sometimes it might be awkward for us to go to a networking event in terms of we're saying, hi, I've spent the last 5 years in school and now I need a job or something, or a co-op or a summer job. So how would you guys suggest getting over that initial awkwardness, or maybe some tips that students could use when going to a networking event to get over that fear of not being, experienced enough to be there?
Just do it. I always admire the students that do that, that may contact me and say, hey, can I come in and just learn about what you do? It takes guts, but you need to make those connections. There's not a lot of students out there doing that. So if you do it, you're going to be putting yourself above others, because people are going to say, wow, that person really is ambitious and really, that took guts to come to this chamber networking event and introduce themselves. So yeah, my advice is do it. It will pay off. You'll make excellent connections. And it's nobody really, well, there's some people that like to network, but most people don't really feel comfortable with it. So just remember, you're not alone. Most people feel the way you feel, but do it.
Definitely do it, but always start by asking the person you're standing with what they do. So if you start with asking a question, because everybody likes to talk about themselves. So if you ask somebody a question, you're in a situation where you're enabling them to start talking about themselves. You start to relax and you've got time to think about what it is you're going to say, they appreciate the fact that, especially if they're on their own, and I always make a beeline for somebody who is standing on their own, who looks really uncomfortable, standing at the back of the room, I really don't want to be here, but I have to. I always make a beeline for them. I think they hate it, because they see me coming and go, but if you make a beeline for those people, one, they appreciate it, and I've made so many friends, not just business acquaintances. As Kristen has alluded to, we are friends. We have met through CWB and we have formed a friendship, and the same with a number of other people within CWB and within our groups. If you can just get past that walking through the door, and we all hate it the first time, you walk into a room, especially if everything, and they look at you. But if you hold your head high, believe you belong there, which you do, take a deep breath, find somebody that you can talk to, and ask them a question. The rest just happens.
I've always been actually very, very shy, and now I speak regularly at conferences, and I'm pretty good at talking to people. But growing up between grade 5 and grade 7, if you know Halifax or Nova Scotia at all, my family moved from Wolfville to Digby to Yarmouth to Liverpool to Antigonish to Halifax in a 2-year span, based on my mom's job with the province. And so I would literally come to a new school and be there for like 3 months and then go to the next school. And so one of the things that I learned at those places was to listen, was to see what people were interested in, what people were doing. So when I moved to Digby, the first thing was, I was like, what is everyone doing? Everyone here plays baseball. I can play baseball. Okay, let's do baseball. I grew a lot at one point, and so then it switched to basketball. I went somewhere and played double bass. Whatever sort of was what people were doing, I decided I was going to do that. And I think now I feel pretty comfortable going in and finding out what are people interested in. So, you know, to build on the question of what do you do, I also like to ask people what they like to do, because those two things are not always the same thing. But getting people to talk about the things that they're actually interested in can be a really fun experience. If you want to really get yourself out there, not that I'm plugging the event, but I run a local conference called PodCamp. PodCamp is an annual free conference. This coming year, it's in January, where anyone can speak on any topic they want related to their digital life. So we have people talk about being an introvert and being on social media. We have people that talk about mental health. This year, I think we're having a panel on mental health. We've had people talk about coding. We've had people talk about really heavy lifting tech stuff. But it's an opportunity for hundreds of people to come together and just get to listen to people speak. And there's a little bit of networking that happens there. What I really recommend you do is come with someone, like bring someone with you as a little bit of support, but try not to do the whole like, okay, you and I together against the world forever and ever. Make sure that they're there with you to sort of make sure that you do have someone to sit with when you really, really want someone to sit with. But at the same time, you know, sit with other people, sit next to other people, ask people questions. Asking people questions is a really, really great idea across the board. If there's one thing I could say from the whole panel of almost every single thing we've talked about is ask way more questions than you're asking and try and get as much information as you can in that regard.
Can I just elaborate on what you've just said there? Take a friend, definitely. If you go to a networking meeting and you see people you know, say hi, bye, and then go and find people you don't. Because there's no point me sitting on a table with Kristen and Mike if we go networking, because I already know them, we will already do business. So if you're out at a business networking event, you don't want to stay with people you know. Go and find a table of people that you've never spoken to before. Try and do a bit of research before you go to find out who's there, especially if it's a sit-down event, and try and get yourself onto a table of people that are either like-minded, that you want to get to know, or that you think you could do business with, either them helping you or you helping them. So do your research first, and always go and see as many new people as you can possibly see.
And just one more thing, even set I'm going to go to this event and I'm going to speak to 3 new people, and just have that target in mind when you start.
And follow up. Follow up. If you take a load of cards and you say to people, we'll be in touch, follow up. The biggest thing about networking is people go to networking events, they have great chat, they come away with a huge buzz, which you do. You come away with a huge buzz, and then you put the cards on the table, on the desk, in your pocket, and never to see the light of day again. You have just wasted the time that you had there, and you have lost potentially some huge opportunities. Just one thing, and I can't remember the name of it, hopefully Melanie, you, Danielle, might actually be able to help, is there is a group for younger networkers, certainly student networkers. It's aged between 18 and 34 from memory. I cannot remember the name of the group, but...
Do you know, Danielle?
That's right.
Fusion was there.
Fusion. It doesn't cost anything. Get your names on the list. Start networking now. Go out. They will actually help and teach you to network. And a little tip, if you go to one of them, one of the things they do a lot is you'll walk in and you'll get a little coloured sticker. Red, blue, green and yellow. And then you'll be chatting away, drinking your orange juice or whatever, and all of a sudden somebody will say, right, all change, go and find all the blues, have to find a yellow. Okay, so all the blues stickers have to go and talk to somebody with a yellow sticker. And what that actually does is it forces people, so it sounds horrendous, but actually it's great fun. It's sort of a bit like speed dating, but it gives you an opportunity to meet other people, and it forces you to have to go and speak to somebody. So if you get opportunity, get in touch with them. And I've got on my phone, if I switch it on at the end of it, I've got the details, but Danielle, you'll be able to pass that out, won't you? So join them, because that will give you a great insight into and a great start on networking.
Thanks. So we have about 4 minutes left. If anyone has a question. Yep. Yeah. So that was if you deal with confrontation, and how do you deal? Oh, is it competition? Oh, competition. Sorry, not confrontation. So how do you deal with competition?
There isn't any. There isn't any. You turn clients into suppliers, suppliers into clients, and between you, you work together. And as Kristen already alluded to, there are an awful lot of lawyers out there. There's an awful lot of business development people. There are an awful lot of web development companies out there. There is a niche for everyone, and it's looking at working together rather than in competition. It's looking at partnerships. I do web development. I do WordPress. I hate doing it, but I do it because there's times when I need something quick and dirty. I do it. There's other times where I've got the time, the money, or whatever. And Mike, fantastic. Pass it over to him. Let him do it. So there's times you have to look at what it is that you're looking to do. You have to believe you're the best, because you are the best. And you have to embrace your competition and work with them and fill the holes where they've got lacking, and let them fill the holes where you're lacking.
I'll add something. And it's almost the same answer, which is you're literally just competing with yourself. There is no web development company that's competing with me. Even if people come out and say, like, if someone looks for a bunch of different quotes from a developer, I really don't care what they're doing. And my relationship with development companies, with social media management companies in the city is really, really good. So business comes to me when they either can't handle it, or it's not their specialty, or it's not what they're best at, and business goes to them likewise. There's a great social media consultant in town named Anita Kirkbride. She runs a company called Twerp Communications. And she has literally on her site, here are a list of really good social media consultants in Halifax. I have to talk to her and get me updated, because it says at the bottom, I've never really met him or worked with him, and she has now, but I'm on that list. And there's 3 or 4 people that she knows really, really well, and she literally writes a glowing review for another social media management company right on her website. And I absolutely encourage you to look at people as potential allies. There are lots of web development companies around, but there's a lot more business around. And that's true of every single situation. And when companies don't have time for business or don't have room for business or don't have the right scope for that business, they're going to look around to the companies that they've had good relationships with. And so, we've tried our best to keep a very good relationship with people who do the same thing in our industry.
Anita is a good example, actually, and I know Anita very well, but that's a good example because who better for you to go to if you haven't got time to do that particular work? Who better to go to than somebody who's got the guts, the courage, and the conviction of knowing how good they are, that they can promote you and other people? I think that is awesome. I also think she's pretty awesome too.
Good. Perfect. Well, that wraps everything up right on time, 10:15. So Colleen and myself will be stamping your Colleen and Danielle, will be stamping your passport. So just make sure it's all filled out and you've completed your survey. And I'm sure these guys will stick around for 5 minutes-ish. You want to get them up and introduce yourselves and maybe ask a question you were too shy to ask. So
Could I also say thank you very much for having us here and being here yourselves as well.
Yeah, thank you on behalf of all of us here. It was very informative.